and now quite a senior sadhu of our order, Swami Nishpapananda. His association with the St. Louis Center goes back over 50 years now. We had a wonderful session last night explaining his long relationship with Swami Satprakashanandaji, one of the great early pioneer Swamis who came to this country from India. So we're very happy that Swamiji is here. And his topic today will be Swami Brahmananda as a spiritual teacher.
Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityo ma amritam gamaya, avirabirma edi, rudrayatye dakshinamukam te namam pahinityam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the ever-changing to the unchanging. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through, and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Peace, peace, peace. So, good morning. I am so happy to be back here again and see all of you after this very interesting and challenging pandemic has changed everything. And happy to be with my brother monks in Washington, D.C., plus one that wasn't here last time. So the topic, as Swami said, is Swami Brahmananda. The audacious topic is Swami Brahmananda as a spiritual teacher. Now, I'm just going to briefly go over his life. I know you're all familiar with it, but I want to bring up some things that will be relevant as we talk about his mature years. The focus will be on first-hand accounts of Swami Brahmananda's interaction with friends, monastic disciples, and devotees during the mature period of his life. How he prodded, counseled, reprimanded, and otherwise inspired people to set their feet on the path and realize God. He was born Rakal Chandra Ghosh in January of 1863 in a village about 36 miles from Calcutta. He lived 60 years or so until 1922. Rakal was a handsome, energetic young boy, good at sports, gardening, and fishing. His early academic career was excellent until he took his mind off that, then it changed a bit. He was fond of devotional singing. When the village minstrel would sing kirtan, he would listen with rapt attention and try to learn the songs. As a young boy, he would practice meditation in the Kali temple, and during Durga Puja, sit behind the priest and meditate like a yogi. From his childhood, Rakal was quiet by nature and deeply religious. And he had great physical strength as a boy. None of the other village boys could compete with him. And he had this physical strength to the end of his life. Swami Nirvanananda, who was his attendant in the last years of his life, narrated an incident where Swami Brahmananda became annoyed with him. In the middle of the night, something was to be placed so that Swami Brahmananda could find it without opening his eyes, without turning on the light, and it wasn't there. And he got angry with this young monk and pushed him so hard that he went out of the room onto the veranda. And Swami Nirvanananda thought, all this time with Maharaj, I never knew he was so strong. Meanwhile, in Dakshineswar, Sri Ramakrishna prayed for a pure-hearted young man with deep love of God who could stay with him and imbibe his teachings, who he could really pour his teaching and his heart into. He had a vision. Just a few days before Rakhal's coming, I saw Mother putting a child into my lap saying, "This is your son." I shuddered and asked in surprise, "Mother, what do you mean? I have a son?" She explained with a smile, "This will be your spiritual child," and I was comforted. Sometime in the middle of 1881, Sri Ramakrishna had another vision. Two boys dancing on a full-blown lotus floating in the Ganga. One of the boys was Sri Krishna, and the other, the same boy whom the mother had previously placed on his lap. That very day, Rakhal, crossing the Ganga, came to Dakshineswar from Konagar, and the master immediately recognized him as his spiritual son. The master said Rakhal has the keen intelligence of a monarch. He could rule a kingdom if he wished. In the 5 years between 1881 and 1886, Sri Ramakrishna trained Rakhal. The boy had many spiritual experiences, including samadhi in his master's presence. After Sri Ramakrishna's passing, Rakhal renounced the world and took monastic vows with his brother disciples and became Swami Brahmananda. Swami Vivekananda called him Raja because of Sri Ramakrishna's assessment of Rakhal, and he was later known in the order as Maharaj, or Great King, or Raja Maharaj. From late 1889 to 1895, Swami Brahmananda practiced hard spiritual austerity. Most of the time he was with one of his brother disciples at the insistence of Holy Mother and Vivekananda, so that someone could look after him and beg food for him if he became too absorbed in meditation to look after himself. While in Omkaranath on the river Narmada, Swami Brahmananda was once in samadhi for 6 days without a break. While he and Swami Subodhananda were in Vrindavan, Vijay Krishna Goswami questioned him. The Master gave you everything that is covetable in spiritual life, visions and samadhi. Why then do you still practice so much austerity? I think he said something like, in some of the, why do you behave like a beggar? Why do you then practice so much austerity? Humbly, Maharaj replied, the experiences and visions I got by his grace, I'm now trying to attain as my permanent possession. He knew where he was going because he'd been there. But he had to put intense effort to make those exalted experiences his own. In 1895, he returned to Calcutta, in Swami Ashokananda's words. His 6 years of wandering had been years of great spiritual growth And on his return to Calcutta, everyone was amazed to see his shining face just beaming with indescribable joy. He had become so very calm and grave. Yes, the boyish youth who had gone out traveling in 1889 had returned a mature man, vitally changed. He was steadfast, stalwart, enduring, self-reliant, master of innumerable spiritual experiences. He was now well established within himself. So he did what he told Vijay Krishna Goswami he wanted to do. He was now qualified to rule both a spiritual and material kingdom with just a little more experience. Vivekananda handed responsibility of the fledgling Ramakrishna movement to mainly Swami Brahmananda and Swami Swahananda before he died. Vivekananda had tremendous faith in Swami Brahmananda's judgment and loyalty. He said, "Others may desert me, but Raja will stand by me till the last." Now, Vivekananda was not an easy leader to follow, as you know. He'd take these sharp course corrections, you see, and even Swami Premananda, Swami Yogananda, his brother disciples would question him, "Why all this social service? The master never taught us this." They'd give him a hard time. But Swami Brahmananda was always had that very deep insight to understand what was going on. He didn't question him. He just had a different, very different temperament. As an example, one day in autumn, Swami Vivekananda was in Belur Math, and he saw Mother Ganga, or Mother Durga, walking across the Ganga towards Belur Math. And he said, he says, "We have to have Durga worship. I saw Mother Durga walking across the Ganges." And get an image, it was the last minute, and they had the image worship of Mother Durga at Belur Math. Later, come to find out, Swami Brahmananda also had seen Mother Durga walking across the Ganga, but hadn't said anything. See, they're on the same page, but their temperaments are quite different, but very complementary, I would say, very complementary. "Others may desert me, but Raja will stand by me till the last." When Swami Vivekananda passed away, Swami Brahmananda cried like a child over his body. As Swami Swahananda pulled him up, he said, "It is as if the entire Himalayan mountain range has disappeared from before my eyes." Now, the subject is Swami Brahmananda as a spiritual teacher. I'll give a summary description of his various qualities as a spiritual teacher, gleaned from the first sketch of his life, which appeared serially in the 1930 Prabhupada Bharata. He's known both as Swami Brahmananda and Maharaj, and I'll use those terms interchangeably. And interspersed with this description, we'll look at specific examples and reminiscences that illustrate the points made in the article. Swami Brahmananda never posed as a religious preacher or teacher. He did not talk much on spiritual matters, either because he held them too high and sacred or because his gentle nature shrank from the attitude of a teacher. Never in his life did he give a formal discourse on religion. Now contrast that to Swami Vivekananda. Very different in temperament. Whenever he spoke on it, though, he did so in a mood of inspiration, in the course of ordinary conversation. If a religious question was put to him directly, he would generally avoid it, pointing to one of his gurubhais or a learned younger Swami who happened to be nearby. Now that's the fit person to answer that important question. At times, with his usual sense of fun, he would introduce a light topic or create an amusing situation in the course of which he would disclose a spiritual truth or give a hint or suggestion which would solve the doubt of a questioner, often changing their outlook on life forever. These were matters of almost daily occurrence. To all appearances, he was as merry and playful as a child, with an inexhaustible fund of jokes and stories, but all gaiety, all frivolity was on the surface. There was an undercurrent all the time of spiritual consciousness, which nothing could thwart or impede. It was many times observed that while merriment was in full swing, any expression of genuine religious feeling by any present in the group would bring about a sudden and complete change. His cheerful, soft countenance would then appear suddenly grave and solemn, and a perfect serenity would fill the room. And with that, everyone felt that. Everyone got that mood. His natural inwardness was exhibited in the occasional moods of absorption into which he passed while listening to random conversation or trying to smoke the hookah. He wasn't very good at smoking the hookah. As well as in his dignified and sober demeanor. He loved all, he mixed with all. He had interest in everything, yet he soared far above and beyond. He viewed things neither in the grossness of their limited reality as things and beings, nor in the homogeneity of pure consciousness. Though living apart as a spectator, he had an ineffable love for each and all, because he saw and felt that divine consciousness percolating through the forms. This witness attitude was so remarkable a feature that it could not escape even casual notice. In spite of this habitual reserve, if anyone had real trouble or difficulty in spiritual life, he was always ready to help. To many he gave private instruction, but only after being convinced of their sincerity. In his own words, "There are many who ask me to bless them. I can't help laughing inside. They don't do as I ask them to do. In fact, the moment they leave me, they do whatever they like. They want to attain the highest spiritual realization without exertion." Sound familiar? Don't you see? When such people come, I usually while away the time in aimless talk, cracking jokes and making fun. I speak of higher matters only to a very few, who I think will take my words and act upon them. But even they don't follow those instructions fully and properly. Besides giving general and individual religious instruction, he gave spiritual initiation to a select few. In the matter of Diksha, in accepting one as a true disciple, he was particularly strict and discriminating. He refused almost everyone when they first approached him. If he found someone deserving, he would give them a preparatory lesson after the aspirant's persistent prayer for 4 or 5 years. The final initiation would come in some cases after 7 to 10 years. After the aspirant's steadiness and earnestness had been fully tested and his or her eagerness for truth roused to the extreme. But once accepted as a disciple, Maharaj would stand by that person for good until they reached the very shores of immortal bliss. The following words of his reveal the speaker himself. He is the best guru who, whether his physical body stands or falls, will see that every one of his disciples attains liberation. The speciality of this age is that even after the disappearance of his physical body, the guru appears to his disciples to guide and bless them. And this happened in the lives of many of Swami Brahmananda's initiated disciples. Some of them talked about it, and we know about it, but probably many more didn't talk about it. He loved his disciples not in spite of their faults and weaknesses, but with them. If anyone went astray, he would not reproach or despise, but like a fine mother, feel more for him, watch him inwardly, and bless him all the more, sometimes sending for him, calling him to his side, not to warn or chastise, but to wean that person from the course that he was taking by making him feel the holy attraction of his own personality and infusing into that devotee sufficient spiritual strength to fight against the samskars of many lifetimes. Now, actually, Swami Brahmananda had quite a wide range of how he would treat his disciples. And on the other side of it, this is the very benign side, again, Swami Nirvanananda. Swami Premananda heard what was going on in the next room, and Swami Brahmananda was getting ready to give his attendant a real shellacking. And Swami Premananda, fearing for Suji Maharaj's, he became Swami Nirvanananda later, safety, went in the room and said to him, get out, run away. And what does it take to be in that close proximity to such a soul, to serve them day in and day out for years? Suji Maharaj said, running away from home, I have come here. I have no place to run. So he just hunkered down and took it. So I want to talk about a few things that illustrate these points. The first is Swami Brahmananda's manner of handling problems among the young monks. And this, again, involves not just the young monks, but Swami Premananda, his brother, disciple. Maharaj was looked upon as a spiritual dynamo by his brother disciples. Now, sometimes there were difficulties in the monastery. Young people had joined. And, as we all know, the mind is constituted of both light and dark forces. Sometimes the novices even quarreled and became obstinate and treated their seniors in a disrespectful or rude manner. And yet they had spiritual hankering. Swami Premananda was abbot of the Belur Math, and one day 2 of these novices quarreled yet again. Swami Premananda marched into Swami Brahmananda's presence and said, "If they continue like this, they should be expelled." Brother Baburam, we should be patient with these boys. They have received God's grace. Otherwise, how could their minds turn from the transitory values to the eternal truth? They have received God's grace. We must be patient. We must be patient with them, brother. All right, Maharaj. I'm bringing them. Swami Premananda brought the 2 novices and whoever else he could round up into Maharaj's presence and said, "Maharaj, just bless them. Put your hand on their heads." So one by one, they received Swami Brahmananda's blessing, and they felt at once spiritual exaltation. Their minds were raised to a higher level, and they could not stoop to petty quarrels anymore. Unless the mind gravitates to lower levels, you will not quarrel about petty things. When the mind is raised higher, petty things seem petty, distant. They don't impact us the same way. See, the solution to these problems, these knotty, obdurate problems that we face in human life, don't come at the level that they present themselves. They aren't solved, but they are resolved at a higher level. So here you've got this spiritual dynamo, and all you have to do is threaten expulsion, and you arouse that compassion, and he's now in a mood to bless people because that compassion is there. So Baburam, he was a pretty sharp cookie. Expulsion, we must expel them. No. All right, I'm bringing them. Okay, one after another. And this wasn't an isolated event. He solved problems in his own way. And they knew this. And if there was something that Swami Swahananda or Swami Premananda couldn't handle, they knew where to go. So what was it like from the other side? What was it like from the perspective of a novice to be in Swami Brahmananda's presence? For this we'll go to the reminiscences of Swami Gyanatmananda, who first met Swami Brahmananda in 1918. What was it, he says, that we found in Maharaj? A man of this earth, yet not of this earth, completely absorbed in meditation wherever he might be. When he was seated, his abstracted look told us his mind was on a different plane. He used to smoke frequently. His hubble bubble always kept ready for him when he sat in his chair. But would he smoke? A puff now, another puff after a few minutes. Then the tobacco would burn itself out. Another preparation made, and that too met the same fate. His mind, attached to the tobacco for a few minutes, and then soaring in another region. As I mentioned before, he had a hard time smoking. So in 1987, I was in Boston and Providence with Swami Chaitananda, and Swami Sarvagananda opened up the Providence archives for us. And in that archive was an exquisitely clear photograph of the photograph that you've probably seen of Swami Brahmananda smoking a hookah. And in that photograph, his eyes were so clear, you could see that he was out to lunch. He was gone. There's no way he's going to smoke that hookah. It looked like, Ramakrishna's description of the mother bird hatching her eggs. I mean, I'd seen the picture many times before, but until you can see those eyes clearly, it hasn't been copied and copied and copied, you get that sense of almost being in their immediate presence and what he's describing. When he walked, his feet, as it were, touched, and touched not the earth, but glided over the ground. Swami Vijayananda also talked about this unusual way that the monastic disciples of Ramakrishna had of walking. It's kind of indescribable, but majestic, and somehow it spoke of their spiritual I don't want to say eminence, but they're somehow the realization that was in their heart was reflected in the way they moved and noticeable in the way they walked. During Maharaj's visits to Belur, he used to get up very early and come to the eastern veranda of the upper story of the old monastery, facing the Ganga, and take his seat in an armchair. We novices arrived a little earlier, took our seats on the floor, and tried to meditate before him, sitting in 2 rows. Maharaj generally remained absorbed in meditation, but sometimes he walked between our rows, repeating silently the name of God, and thereby giving impetus and strength to our childish attempts at meditation. When the sun rose and the bell for work rang, we generally got up and, making pranams to his noble feet, went to do our respective duties. When Maharaj turned his benign eyes on any one of us in particular, as one of my fellow brothers has described, that fortunate one was sure to feel a divine joy that would last at least a day. If any of us were lucky enough to have a touch from him, that novice was certain to have the joy last at least 3 days. I also had the good fortune to feel his touch. At that time, Maharaj sometimes used to have fun with us. And what divine fun it was. We all enjoyed it to our heart's content and went to our allotted duties with our hearts full of unspeakable joy and bliss. Now, Ramakrishna did the same sort of thing with his monastic disciples. He'd just be goofing around with them, apparently, but raising their minds to heights that they couldn't get to on their own after he passed away. So again, he's showing through experience what divine joy there is in spiritual life. So there would be no question in the minds of these young monastics, and they'd have the impetus and strength to follow the path. He's already shown them where they're going. Now, Swami Brahmananda's teaching method, and I picked this up from a 1968 talk given by Swami Satprakashananda in St. Louis. He was speaking on his guru, Swami Brahmananda. An ordinary teacher gives instruction to the ear, An extraordinary teacher gives instruction to the heart. That is, opens the heart, the spiritual heart. His instruction serves as an eye-opener. I'm quoting Swami Satprakashananda's talk. A complete change on the outlook of life takes place. This has been evidenced by many of us who had the blessed privilege of sitting at Swami Brahmananda's feet and receiving his spiritual instructions from him. He didn't teach like an ordinary teacher, giving constant instructions and binding the student with rules and regulations. He was an awakener of souls. He would not speak too much, and he would not take up a scripture and explain it verse by verse. That type of instruction was done by junior monks. Now, as an introduction to his own experience with Swami Brahmananda as a spiritual teacher, he mentions something that Swami Atmananda narrated to him. Swami Atmananda was Swamiji's disciple, and a very highly qualified monk that was respected by the direct disciples for his erudition, for his attainment, his spiritual attainment. And they were both in Dhaka, so they knew each other. So he says, Swami Atmananda told me. When Swami Vivekananda came back from his first visit to the West, he was at Belur Math, and he asked Swami Atmananda to bring the Bhagavad Gita and read, starting at the 2nd chapter. The Swami got to the 3rd verse of the 2nd chapter, which was Swamiji's favorite verse. Give up this faint-heartedness, so scorcher of foes. Stand up like a hero and fight. Swami Atmananda read the verse. Vivekananda said, your Gita study is over. What happened? In the presence of his guru, who also happened to be the world teacher, Swami Vivekananda, an insight developed all of a sudden, a spiritual perception of the basic truths that are indicated by the Gita. So the scripture and the Gita are trying to do the impossible task of describing in words what is beyond words. And unless we have a very subtle spiritual perception, we can't in the true sense understand those spiritual truths that are pointed to by the scripture. We can be familiar with the commentaries, we can memorize the Gita, but we cannot grasp the fundamental truths that underlie them without this subtle spiritual aptitude. And in the presence of Swami Vivekananda, this is the benefit. When you try really hard, when you're interested in this, and you exert yourself, you reach a ceiling as to how far you can go. But in the presence of a spiritual master, you can break through from that level to the next level or the level after that. And, you get this lift, which is, you don't appreciate it unless you've tried. And then you realize, oh boy, I'm going to stay around this person. So this insight served Swami Atmananda as a key to understanding the entire Bhagavad Gita. And then the lecture continues. I recall one incident after I had come to Maharaj. He gave me some preliminary instruction, and I felt very much benefited at once, as if I had developed a new vision. Many things I had never understood before were quite clear to me. Swami Brahmananda told me, you will have a new life. Mentally, I said, I already have a new life. And actually, I had tried to study the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads from a very early age. In fact, he started a regular practice of prayer, meditation, and scriptural study twice a day from his early youth, on his own. No one told him to. And he proceeded, not knowing whether this was helping him, knowing whether he was doing the right thing in his meditation. And in 1916, when he saw Swami Brahmananda for the third time, Swami Brahmananda came with a party to Dhaka, where Swami, this young man, Harish Das, lived, closely associated with the Ramakrishna organization there, giving classes and so forth. He asked to be admitted into monastic life. And Swami Brahmananda said, no. Your mother's alive, your widowed mother is alive, and you're the only surviving child, and you have to take care of her until she passes. Then you can join. After asking for admission into the order, he asked for spiritual instruction. And Swami Brahmananda said, continue doing as you have been doing. You will have a new life. Now, this was encouraging because Swami had not said anything about his spiritual practices or his doubts about his spiritual practices. So Swami Brahmananda was saying both, I know what you're doing and it's okay, keep going. And now I'm going to give you this extra stuff. To which he said, I already feel I've got a new life. So a few months after this, and this is interesting, I just happened into it. He gives it as an aside as he's giving the talk. It's coming out extemporaneously. I have never spoken of this to anyone. So a couple months after this, 2 or 3 months after this event, after Swami Brahmananda and his party had left Bangladesh, or East Bengal at that time, he was going through his usual spiritual practice, trying to meditate, and all of a sudden, he thought of one of the Gita verses, and the meaning of it opened up to him. Of the unreal there is no existence. Of the real there is no non-existence. This is Gita, 2nd chapter, 16th verse. And simultaneously, he realized that this was a key to many of the other verses in the Gita and was very similar to a verse in the Mandukya Karika. And that verse is, that which is non-existent in the beginning and non-existent in the end is so, that is also non-existent in the present manifested state. Such are apparent like illusions, and still they are looked upon as real. So what's going on here is he had an insight into the nature of Brahman and Maya, which is a key to understanding the Bhagavad Gita and these other scriptures. So and he realized at the same time that this was Swami Brahmananda's gift, the gift of his association with Maharaj. In his reminiscences of Swami Brahmananda in the Eternal Companion, Swami Satprakashananda wrote, the meaning of the scriptures became an open book to me because of Swami Brahmananda's blessing. You will have a new life. Now, what about those poor souls who came to Swami Brahmananda and with whom he whiled away the time in aimless talk, cracking jokes, and making fun? What about those poor guys? For this, we go to Swami Vijayananda's reminiscences. Swami Vijayananda was a disciple of Raja Maharaj, And he was the son of a Maharaj himself, and a pretty tough cookie. He started the center in Buenos Aires. That was probably the hardest center in the Western Hemisphere to get started. On his own. He didn't have anyone else around to come and visit him. So this took place at Belur Monastery when Swami Vijayananda was a novice. During the afternoon, outside people would come to the monastery. They were from all social strata: farmers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, writers, novelists, artists, young university students, employees, servants. All kinds of people without distinction would gather around Swami Brahmananda. And the conversation between the Swami and these people was conducted in a climate of great joy. The subjects varied according to life, occupation, and vocation. For example, and this is what I like about Swami Vijayananda, he writes like a Westerner, and he had a very Western attitude at this point, very skeptical attitude about the basic spiritual truths. For example, one day the Swami asked the great scientist Jagdish Chandra Bose, "Sir, how long will you continue to observe the different manifestations of life in the plant kingdom? Don't you see? The minerals, the rocks are waiting for you. They want you to show the world that they also have the same divine consciousness. Everything is a manifestation of that living divinity." The professor was very pleased with this extraordinary recognition of his work and said humbly, "If you bless me, Maharaj, someday I shall be able to do it." To a famous dancer he said, "What a wonderful dance you showed me the other day, interpreting the young Sri Krishna. But if you allow me, I would suggest something." See, this is very subtle, very gentle. If you allow me, I would suggest something. He's not saying, "Hey, listen here." His method is different. But if you allow me, I would suggest something. While dancing, as well as in any other of his activities, Sri Krishna never forgot he was God incarnate. So, when you represent Krishna, don't forget this. The dancer said, "Maharaj, this is impossible. How will I be able to raise myself to that divine height?" Okay, try this. Before beginning your dance, just meditate for a while on Sri Krishna, and you will see that Sri Krishna himself will take possession of your body, and your dance will be different, will be affected by that. Very practical advice. Maharaj told a lady, mother of so-and-so, "What a delicious dish you prepared last week. But," again this gentle but, "if you add this spice," and he mentions the spice, "and then offer it to the deity in your home shrine, you will see how much happiness you will find in your heart. You've always cooked for your family. From now on, cook for God. And your sons, by eating that sanctified food, will also be benefited." I would observe these extraordinary meetings and would notice all felt great joy. When the meeting was finished, they would say, "Maharaj loves me more than anyone else." And I would think, these people are crazy. Maharaj is a human being, and he must have more liking for some than for others. how could it be that everyone is his dearest? Besides, I would think in my egoistic approach to spirituality, what kind of meeting is this? No advice on prayer or detachment or how to meditate. Maharaj didn't tell anyone that he or she should practice austerity or do any spiritual practice whatsoever. And here I'll say he is an ocean of spirituality. I don't understand anything. One day about 2:00, I was called to his room, called on the carpet here, and there for the first time learned one aspect of true spirituality. Maharaj had already given me a nickname, which he would use when we were alone. It was a Western nickname. Smilingly, somewhat jokingly, he said, "My son, I also observe you when you are observing me." Do you know something? People don't know what true spirituality is. In this world, most of them don't know what pure love is. They don't know how to love. And nevertheless, they expect to be loved by others. They come to see me, expecting that I will solve their problems. I tell them that they should tell everything to God, and He will remove their pain. All suffer, but everyone who comes here has something good inside them. Maybe they don't know it. They don't recognize their own wonderful quality. I encourage them to develop this good aspect that they have so that they can get shraddha, so that they get faith in themselves. They feel my love in their hearts, and their hearts melt. And so they continue to love me and to get ready for spiritual life by nourishing that faith in themselves and developing that faith in themselves and their love for me. Later on, when, by God's mercy, they have a desire for purification and permanent happiness wells up within them, I will tell them, do this. And then in clean, cultivated soil, the seed of spirituality will germinate and grow. But if from the very beginning I would have started giving them spiritual advice, in general they would say, "What's new about this? Everything the Swami is saying we already know. It's written in the books." So he wasn't wasting his time in frivolity. He was taking these devotees from where they stood, mostly without their conscious knowledge, and getting them ready for deeper life. And when they were ready, he'd take them to the next step. And now he turns from this young man's question and his skepticism to a lesson for his young disciple. Besides, I shall tell you a secret. This world is made up of good and bad things. They vary only in degree. Covered by egoistic ideas, people don't feel the presence of real love. And when this egoism collectively increases too much, the great seekers of pure love pray to the divine to come and save suffering humanity. Hearing their prayers, pure love, that is God, incarnates, takes a human form. This is the secret of the divine incarnation. So this is in the Gita, but it's coming through this channel of someone who lived and was so close and so blessed by this recent divine incarnation. People have everything, but lost in ignorance, vanity, and egoism, They forget the necessity of feeling God's presence. Pure love is the remedy for all ailments. With sincere and pure love, you can help others. Only love without egoism cleans all mortal impurity. Do you understand, my son? Try and practice. So I'm done. That's it. And I wanted to give a little bit more about Diksha, how he would divine through his insight and meditation the Ishta and spiritual mood through which any particular devotee would most efficiently reach God. And this is not a task for ordinary teachers. This is a task for extraordinary teachers. Someone realizes God in a particular path, and that's what they teach people, but it will suit some people more than others. And if he couldn't, he had to have that insight or he wouldn't initiate someone. And he'd give people a hard time. He'd kind of pester them, getting them ready for initiation. But not necessarily. There's the case that you can read in The Eternal Companion. It's part of Swami Nirvanananda's reminiscences of this. He's at Balaram Boshe's house with Swami Brahmananda. And this teenage girl and her brother come, and the girl wants to see Maharaj at nap time. It's not possible. And she said, please, I'll just bow down and leave. Understanding her sincerity, well, he understood that she was not an ordinary person, or he wouldn't have gone back to Maharaj. And he went back to Maharaj. He says, Sarat Maharaj has sent this girl. He says, yes, send her in. Mentioning Sarat's name, yes, send her in. And she bowed down to him. While she was making pranam, she started sobbing uncontrollably. Finally, Swami Ramananda says, get up, my child. Tell me what happened. She couldn't speak. Finally, when she found words, she pointed to Sri Ramakrishna's picture on the wall and said, he told me to come to you. This girl was married at 14. Her husband died right away almost. And the situation at that time was very dire for this young woman. So living at her father-in-law's house, she prayed every day for a year to God, see my pitiable condition, please help me, what can I do? After a year, she had this vision. She felt uplifted. She said, my son, Rakal, is nearby in Bagh Bazar. Go to him. He'll help you. She didn't know anything about Ramakrishna. Nothing. And she didn't say anything. But as soon as she could, she went to her mother from her father-in-law's house and spilled everything. Her mother had heard of Ramakrishna. And she thought, how am I going to get to Bagh Bazar? It's way on the other side of the city. And she sent her daughter with her son to Bagh Bazar. And asking around for a holy man living in Bagh Bazar, they were sent to Udbodhan She told the story to Swami Saradananda. Swami Saradananda sent her to Belur Mandir. So when Swami Nirvanananda went in, 2 hours later, he could see that she'd been initiated. So there are no hard and fast rules. This girl was ready. And she came several times, frequently, while Maharaj was alive, and a time or two after he died, to Belur Math. In 1942, Suji Maharaj saw an elderly nun and a young girl disciple at Belur Math. She came to him. He didn't recognize her. It was the same person that had come 24 years earlier. And he asked her what she'd been doing. She'd been practicing spiritual austerities in Vrindavan and Benares as per Maharaj's instructions. And Suji Maharaj says she showed signs of definite spiritual attainment. About a year after that, the young disciple came to Belur Math on her own and found Swami Nirvanananda and narrated that in the interim, her teacher had died. In her last illness, she was bedridden. She asked for an almanac. And on a particular day, she told everyone to pray and chant God's name. And in full consciousness, she left her body chanting Ramakrishna's name. So we don't really, this is something that happened to be recorded, but we can't fully understand what these great souls have done by their contact with other human beings, and how they've changed the flow of life of those around them. So anyway, that just gives a glimpse of the subject, and now I'm done.
Many thanks, Swamiji, for a very beautiful talk. He has a nice connection because Swami Brahmananda is his Paramaguru. So to hear it from someone whose own guru was a disciple, it gives a little something special to it. So we're very grateful that he spoke on this topic. And Swamiji will be here tonight also. If anybody would like to come for informal satsang, then you're welcome, and then he'll go back after that. So I'm very happy. Hope you don't take so long between the next visit. Come back as soon as you can. It's very nice you could be here. Next Sunday, Swami Brahmarupanandaji, he'll continue his series on teachings of Ashtavakra. And we invite everyone to come to the basement after this for some refreshments, and then we'll have a closing song by Pratishta. Thank you.
Amritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Shravanam Sri Madatatam Bhubigiranti Uridajana Bhubigiranti Uridajana জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই কোথা হতে আসে কোথা ভেসে যায় জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই ফিরে ফিরে আসে কত কাঁদি হাসি ফিরে ফিরে আসে কত কাঁদি হাসি কোথা যায় সদা ভাবি গোতায় জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই কি খেলায় আমি খেলিবা কেন জাগিয়ে ঘুমাই কুহকে যেন কি খেলায় আমি খেলিবা কেন জাগিয়ে ঘুমাই কুহকে যেন এ কেমন ঘোর হবে নাকি ভোর এ কেমন ঘোর হবে নাকি ভোর অবিরাম গতি নিয়ত ধায় জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই কি কাজে এসেছি কি কাজে গেল কি জানে কেমন কি খেলা হলো কি কাজে এসেছি কি কাজে গেল কে জানে কেমন কি খেলা হলো প্রবাহের বাড়ি রহিতে কি পারি প্রবাহের বাড়ি রহিতে কি পারি যাই যাই কোথা কুল কিনায় জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই কি আছো চেতন ঘুমায় নায়ার দারুণ ঘোর নিবিড় আধার কে আছো চেতন ঘুমায় নায়ার দারুণ ঘোর নিবিড় আধার করো তমনাশ হে প্রকাশ করো তমনাশ হে প্রকাশ তব পদে তাই শরণ চাই জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই কোথা হতে আসি কোথা ভেসে যায় জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই ফিরে ফিরে আসে কত কাঁদি হাসে ফিরে ফিরে আসে কত কাঁদি হাসি কোথা যায় সদা ভাবি গোতায় জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই জুড়াইতে চাই কোথায় জুড়াই ও নিরঞ্জনং নিত্যমনন্তরূপং ভক্তানুকম্পাধিত বিগ্রহং বৈ ঈশাবতারং পরমেশ মেঢং তং রামকৃষ্ণং শিরসা নমামি।